I'm David Berlin with ZDNet. Recently, I attended a panel discussion in Cambridge, Massachusetts that talked about why Moore's Law could be failing. It had to do with the fact that even though Moore's Law is still in effect from a physical point of view, that chips are doubling in their performance and the cost appears to be halving every time that doubling takes place, that there are other economic factors involved. The cost is really rising, particularly because of energy costs. So it was very much about green computing. Now, somewhere along the line, we got into the discussion of whether or not there's really an end to how you go green. One point I brought up was maybe you outsource your data center altogether. For example, these days, a lot of people are outsourcing all of their customer relationship management and Salesforce automation systems to outfits like Salesforce.com. So if you follow that natural progression, you could theoretically outsource your entire data center. I brought this point up during the panel discussion, and what happens next is Bruce Taylor, chief analyst from the Uptime Institute, decides that he's going to refer to Salesforce as being unethical, and he uses that as an example of why this idea will never be a reality.
Any other questions?
Part of the, in the much bigger picture, there's a trend towards using, or towards virtualizing what is traditionally thought of as a hardware solution into software through services. And I think it's Jeffrey Nick, is he at EMC?
Yeah. EMC, right.
And we talked about this a little bit last year, but it seemed to me that over time, if you follow the trends, a lot of companies will be pushing their hardware needs out to service providers. I mean, classic example would be Salesforce.com. Right? You don't need to store your customer data anymore. Salesforce takes care of that. And how much, if you follow that, to some natural point in the future, you get to the stuff that Sun's been talking about called Redshift, which is that down the road there's only a handful of computers running the whole world, and we're outsourcing the majority of what we need into those environments. Maybe not computers, but systems. Maybe they're grids, or who knows what they are. But if you follow that course, in my discussion with Jeffrey Nick at EMC, he's like, yeah, our new customer are the service providers, not necessarily the end users, because those service providers will be handling the service needs of, or the storage needs, or whatever it may be, of many Fortune 500 and small, medium enterprises. So if you follow that course, isn't this really, this business about power management, more for the Googles and the Salesforces and those guys longer term? Because the data center goes away, doesn't it? I mean, if you follow this trend.
Only partly. Only partly. Salesforce is a great example. They commissioned last, what was it, December? A $50 million new data center, and it crashed. And it crashed because Salesforce hadn't done the design job of the infrastructure such that they could be reliable for their customers.
But that's just a growing pain.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
It is. I disagree.
It's ethically irresponsible.
Well, when did Google crash?
It's ethically irresponsible.
But when did Google crash?
Google hasn't crashed.
Right, and you think Salesforce isn't going to adjust? It's in its best business interest to
I understand that, and I don't want to be argumentative, but there is an ethical consideration, and it depends on the industry you're in.
So you're saying Salesforce should just close up?
No, I'm saying that they need to be responsible.
Fine, so they will get responsible, won't they? Or are they not going to get responsible?
Well, they had a second crash a month later.
So are you saying they're not going to evolve and get responsible?
Well, let me go to another point. There are industries where your model doesn't translate, financial services being one of them. So there are very, very large users.
And why doesn't the model translate?
Because of the reliability, because of the resiliency. That it's too great to risk their assets. This is my opinion.
So you're saying a service provider can't reproduce the resiliency that somebody develops themselves? They
can. And there are going to be industry sectors who will not trust that. It will take a very long time for that shift to take place.
Okay.
Unethical? Mr. Taylor, I beg to differ. Every company, no matter who it is, has growing pains when it comes to setting up their data center. The fact that Salesforce.com may have had 1 or 2 or even 5 problems. Look, they're in the business of providing a reliable service. Their business is growing. That's evidence to me that lots of customers are willing to store their most precious data, their customer data, with outfits like Salesforce.com. And my bet is that over time, they'll just get more reliable. And also, Salesforce isn't the only service out there that's hosting IT for companies. There's Google with Google Apps. There's also Amazon, who's running its EC2 infrastructure, and right now that's still in beta. But as soon as that comes out of beta, I'm sure more and more companies will be looking at how they can outsource their data centers to outfits like Amazon, Google, Salesforce, and others. For ZDNet, I'm David Berlind.